Now I want you to maybe speak, and you have been, to me as a vicarious representative of a whole generation of pastors, in particular, they're part of this young, restless, reformed thing that's happening in America that's remarkable. Young men and women all over the country holding on to the doctrines of grace, being renewed, getting excited about fresh motivations, excited about the promises that God's given us and hanging on to those. I just was hanging on every word at the Future Grace Conference. I just thought, this is so much what I need. But a lot of us have been in movements and churches that we love dearly, that have discipled us, that have been investing in us, that may not share the same convictions across the board, that may take issue with one of these doctrines of grace, and then there becomes this potential, because a lot of praxis and things flow out of that. And how do we hold on to those things we love so dearly? They've radically reoriented our lives. They've given us a passion that seems enduring, that gives us the right motivation to parent and to lead and to evangelize and to speak the gospel, and yet remain in that humble place where we respect the heritage ahead of us, we respect the older men around us that are leading us. Yeah. I think that's a big issue in my generation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
It is. I mean, I get asked regularly at conferences, especially by associate pastors, youth pastor associates who don't have the senior position for leadership in a church. You're talking about a movement as well as a church, but in a church, younger guys who've been called and they don't see eye to eye with the senior pastor. And I just commend you for caring about respect. I mean, if that can mark the young wrestler's form, respect and humility, would go a long way to avoiding some stereotypes that is unhappy. So yes, we want to admonish older men as fathers, Paul said to Timothy. So if we're going to interact with our seniors, whether in a movement or in a church, we do it with an emotional deference, just because the Bible does have something to say about age and experience being worthy of a young man's deference. And so the spirit will be one thing. It won't be a haughty or pushy or presumptuous or cocky swagger when he goes in there. And it's tragic that is what some Reformed types are known for. The second thing I would say is, you're honest. Yeah, there's nothing clandestine about what we believe. Nobody should smuggle Reformed teaching into a church. Really, we should be totally above board and honest. And as soon as we discern there's some tension, we just go to our leader and you say, let's just talk. Let's talk. You and me. I don't want to do anything behind your back. I don't want to be any kind of subterfuge for your ministry. I don't want to undermine anything. I want to let you know where I'm sensing the rub and lay it out. Now that puts the ball in his court as to how he's going to define the relationship. Because you've been honest, and how he defines it will define whether you can survive, whether you will flourish. And if he says, okay, thank you, I appreciate that, that's not the way I see it, if that's the way you see it, I won't stand in your way. If you want to teach the young people that would be all right. Now, that would be a pretty unusual response, I think. And yet I've heard it. There's some guys that are so doctrinally flexible that they'll say to their associate youth minister, if that helps you and the kids get help, that's okay. And of course the guy's catching his head going, I mean, it really matters. My guess is that over time things are going to get tense, but you don't have to push that. If it does, it does. And you keep the lines of communication clear. If he says, why don't you just avoid those topics and just talk about the gospel, you're probably going to say, my understanding is that these things are at the center of the gospel. How Jesus, what he accomplished when he died, and how it gets applied to sinners for their salvation? And was it planned in eternity? And does he keep his own? And how does he help a kid who's wrestling with pornography with regard to assurance in his life? I can't be quiet about these things. They infiltrate everything, and they're so personally precious to me. And then he has to say, maybe he would say, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And you could help him discern why it's so precious. And he might say, okay, well, I think we better work toward a parting of the ways.
Yeah.
And then you can do that with respect. You can.
It seems like it's important to have a clear conscience before God and a clear conscience before men. So we're open,
That's
honest.
Right. Yep.
Well, I can't adjust what is precious and biblical, and at the same time, I'm not going to, on the sly, in the corner,
No.
hide these things. I think
No.
that's helpful.
No.
That's very
No.
helpful.